What is up, everybody? Welcome to the debut episode of the Sports Media Student Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Rose. You can find me on social media anywhere, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Rob Rose Sports. If you're watching on YouTube, you've already found the channel, but you can subscribe there at Rob Rose Sports. If you forget how to spell it, it's above my head if you're looking on video. Welcome to my little podcast studio in my apartment here. So, if you're listening and you're wondering, who is this guy and what the hell is this podcast and why should I listen to it? I'm going to help you out with that. We're going to get into what this podcast is, who am I, and why should you listen to this thing, and what the goal of the podcast is, why it means something to me. So, quickly, the goal of this podcast, sort of in the name, Sports Media Student Podcast. The idea is for me to give to potential sports media students, current sports media students, middle school, high school, college, or anybody who's, always wanted to be in the sports field and didn't know how to get started or didn't know anybody in the field, an idea of what to do and how to get into the field. So what we'll do with that is through lessons that I've learned from personal experiences, things I've learned from mentors and professors along the way, and things that just from a couple of years of working in sports that I've figured out, and then also through interviews with people in the field, professionals. There's some of, personal mentors of my own, and then, hopefully as the podcast grows, we'll get some people from different avenues of sports media that, not just people in the same industry as me, but people that can help anybody who's interested in learning about sports media, teach you something about how to get started and figure out if this is for you or if it isn't. That's the whole point of this podcast is, I'm a 25-year-old kid who's been working professionally as a sports reporter for 6 months. I certainly don't know everything there is to know about sports media. I don't claim to, but I do know some things. And, I did graduate college 6 months ago and land a job and then go through internships and life as a student. So I can teach you about that. I can teach you how to successfully graduate college and hopefully put yourself in a good spot to land a job after you graduate or before you graduate, like I did in my case. So that's what we're going to cover here. Hopefully I can teach you some of the basics and give you some ideas on how to get your career started either in middle school and high school or in college, or set yourself up to start those careers when you reach the next level of schooling or your job or whatever you get into. So with that brief background of what the podcast is supposed to be, let me get a little bit more into myself. Like I said, I'm 25 years old. My name is Rob Rose. Currently, I'm a sports reporter for the York Dispatch newspaper in York, Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania. I grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. It's a suburb of Philadelphia. If you're not familiar with me at all, first off, thank you to anybody listening to this. Some of you may know me, and I appreciate it, but if you don't know me, a little bit of background. I've been obsessed with sports since I was a kid. People always told me, I should be covering sports or working in sports in some way. I've always just been kind of nuts about sports. People would always come to me with their sports questions. I just was always easily able to memorize things, and actually what I've learned through college is you only really remember things that you have any kind of emotional tie to, so that makes a lot of sense. But I would, after the NBA trade deadline, I'd print out every roster of every team in the league, glue them into a notebook, bring that to school. I'd have all the players' colleges or high schools, if they didn't graduate college, memorized, and people would quiz me. And, I could tell you everyone's college in the NBA at the time. I was bored in class. I would just write down all the teams and all the different divisions and all the sports. And I was just crazy about sports. I've gone to games in Philadelphia forever. My dad would take me to Phillies games for my birthday as a kid every year. And, I've just grew up loving sports. And it's always been something that's important to me, but I never really knew how to make it into a job. I never imagined that I could make my love for sports into a job. Nobody in my life that I knew did anything that they loved. My uncles, cousins, my dad always liked sports, but they had jobs, like real jobs, in a business field, like most people do. So, I just grew up in that, going to college. I went to Penn State, Abington campus originally, and then the University Park campus for half a year, to study business, marketing, management. I hated it. I was miserable. I had a lot of personal things going on at the time, which didn't help the case, but I wasn't going to class. My grades were terrible, and I left in 2015. When I came home, I was trying to find, just trying to find something to do, that I wanted to do. I was, at a miserable point in my life, really, and thanks to my stepmom, I got a job at working in the statistics department for the Trenton Thunder, AA affiliate of the Yankees in Trenton, New Jersey. And I got to be around sports, working with statistics. It was awesome. It wasn't really even like a job. I was getting paid money to watch baseball every day and write down what happened on every pitch, hang out with the radio guys in the booth and talk to them about covering the team, hang out in the press box, talk to reporters, talk to scouts from major league teams, about prospects. And it was just awesome. It was just really cool. And, it was exposure to a new side of sports that I had never really seen. I'd gone to games as a fan, watched games as a fan, but I had never really been a part of an organization or got to know people who were working in sports media and journalists and announcers and things. So it was really awesome exposure. And at the time, I started taking classes at the Penn State Abington campus, just taking basic classes to kind of keep the credits going. And also, to be honest, just make sure that student loan people weren't finding out that I, was done school and come calling for the loans, which is something I'm dealing with now as a graduate. So I started taking some classes, and one of the classes I took was a writing for the web class. I started a sports blog, obviously, and the blog was awesome. It was me basically just writing about sports. We had assignments like live tweeting games. It was really just fun, and I really liked it. I really liked writing. I did well in the class, and after I was done, I asked the professor if there was a student paper on campus and if I could get involved covering sports. So he put me in touch with a professor who taught a class called Newspaper Practicum, and you had to take that class to be one of the reporters, and they didn't have anybody covering sports. So for a semester, I did that, and we put out 2 issues a semester. I covered the Eagles, I covered Penn State football, I wrote some columns, and it was the first time I ever got to see my name in print, and it was awesome. And I really liked that. It was really cool. I felt like I was really doing something. At the same time, I had started writing for some football websites, some football websites you never heard of. Just writing stuff about fantasy football. It was a lot of fun. I was just writing a bunch of things all the time and working. And my grades were much better. I was really motivated and focused on figuring out what I wanted to do, but I was just starting to become a lot more happier. And so this is the end of 2016. While I was working for the Trenton Thunder, I heard one of the reporters talking about this new sports media program at Rider University, which is college in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, very close to Trenton. And I thought that sounds interesting, kind of put it in the back of my mind. And after I had been writing, I decided, you know what? I think I want to transfer to Rider. The business stuff, I was never going to go back to that. At Penn State, my GPA was really bad. It was going to take me taking a lot of classes over again to even get to some kind of a GPA that would allow me to graduate, and a lot of money and a lot of time to get a job that I would hate forever. So I decided to try and transfer to Rider, and I went to a Transfer Tuesday event early January 2017, and I was denied. My GPA was under a 2.5. It was miserable. And what the admissions person told me was basically I was scheduled to take 3 classes that spring semester. She said, if you get all A's in those classes, we'll consider bringing you in on basically academic probation. We'll let you in because your GPA is lower, but you got to get all these 3 A's and then come back to me. So I worked really hard. I got the A's. I continued writing, and I got in May when I sent back the info to them. Immediately messaged like the sports, the student newspaper, the sports section, the radio station on campus, and the TV station on campus. And I told them, hey, I just transferred in. This is, sent them some of my clips, told them a little bit of my backstory, and got involved with all of them immediately. And later that semester became the sports editor of the student paper, became a broadcaster for the university club hockey team on the radio station, and the sports anchor for a news station on the student TV network. So I got just involved. I got a lot of stuff, a lot of different experience and opportunities that I never would have had if I didn't get in there. And going to a smaller school was perfect for me because I got one-on-one time with my professors. I got experience right away that I would have never got if I had gone to a bigger school. And my GPA, it wouldn't have been tough, if they wouldn't kind of have let me in and trying to, put me in a spot where I had to prove that I belong there. I made the dean's list every semester that I was at Rider. I graduated with a 3.9 GPA, and I didn't become much smarter, I don't think. I actually cared about my career now, what I was doing, and although I was doing 100 different things, I was able to stay on top of my schoolwork and build relationships with professors that they would spend extra time teaching me if I did have issues with something. And honestly, what I was learning was interesting. It was either about sports, or I knew I had to take this class as a prerequisite to get into the sports class that I wanted. It was just awesome. And it was an awesome 2 years. While I was there, the Rider News, our student paper, we won College Newspaper of the Year in New Jersey both years. I won individual awards. I won from the New Jersey Press Foundation. I won Journalist of the Year from my class both years I was there. It was just amazing, to go from somebody who had no idea how to write, just liked sports and wanted to find something to do in the field. And 3 years later, being awarded for my writing, it was shocking to family members of mine that had known me. I mean, they always knew that I like sports, but they never imagined that I could write. I mean, how do you know if you can write, if you can story tell, if you don't know anybody who does it? You're not exposed to that. Everybody in my life, they're happy with their lives, but they don't necessarily do, for the most part, jobs that are something that they dreamed of when they were a kid. No, there's only a very small percentage of the world who, if you look back to when you were a kid, can say, wow, that's the same thing that I dreamed of. I dream of, crazy stuff like being an astronaut or being a fireman or whatever. But I've always wanted to be involved in sports, and I get to do that now. So over the time at Rider, I had internships with the Philadelphia Union MLS team in Chester, Pennsylvania, the Ivy League Conference located in Princeton, New Jersey, and the Philadelphia Inquirer newspaper in Philadelphia, and just amazing opportunities. I mean, I was on the field, covering professional soccer, covering a professional sports team in Philadelphia. I covered the UFC in Philadelphia for the Inquirer. For the Ivy League, I went to the Ivy League basketball tournament at Yale University. I'm standing on the court at Yale University. Something with working with the Ivy League something that would have never been even imaginable when I was, a couple of years ago. I was, failing every class I took. And, obviously I didn't go to an Ivy League school, but to be, writing things that go up on the Ivy League website and have, people like enjoy the work I'm doing at the Ivy League, it's something that I never could have imagined. So all those things build an awesome resume for me, and also the support from my professors forever will. I've told them, but they'll never know how much their support and time that they spent with me changed my life and made it a life that I'm proud of having. They'll never be able to understand how much it meant to me, and no matter how many times I tell them every time I talk to them. But through their help, I was able to, build up a really nice resume while I was in school and land the job I have now, the sports reporter for the York Dispatch in York, PA. And, I had that job walking across the stage at graduation. I already had a job doing what I love. And, that is something I never, for a time in my life, I thought I would never graduate college. College, it's not the end all be all for maybe everybody. It's not the life that everybody's supposed to have. That's not for me to tell you. Hopefully some of this podcast will teach you whether or not college is for you or it's not. It's very expensive. And it's not for me to tell you, but for me, graduating college and graduating at the top of my class with a 3.9 GPA, just proved to me that, I could do anything that, if I really wanted to do it and I put my effort into it and it meant something to me, I could get it done. And it's something that I'm proud of, because there was a lot of times, where I thought I was never going to graduate college, and I would, live with that forever. So the point of this podcast is to be able to give you guys a glimpse from what I've done, from the things that I've, as somebody who always wanted to get into sports, but didn't really know how to, and just kind of, fumbled his way through it and just kind of kept going and going and going and figuring things out as I went, and was blessed with amazing mentors like my professors, Jackie and Kalingo, Aaron Carter, Chuck Bausman, different people in my internships, Gary Petoskey, editor at the Philadelphia Inquirer, everyone at the Ivy League. I mean, they've all taught me so much and different things because they were different internships. I was a communications intern for the Ivy League, so I learned from an organization side how things get out, writing articles that way, press releases. With the student paper, just straight up being a journalist, covering basketball, covering, soccer, learning how to cover volleyball, and, learning how to cover different sports that you may not know anything about. I didn't know anything about hockey when I got the job as the broadcaster for the radio station. I found out through an email that there was an opening. I sent them an email. They said I had an interview in a week, and it was the end of the summer. I started watching the last year's Stanley Cup final to learn, hockey lingo and everything. I got a video that I had to memorize to do play-by-play. I made note cards up with every player's name and number on the ice. I memorized every player's number on the ice. I had my dad watch me watch the clip on mute and do play-by-play, and prepared to do this whole 5-minute clip. And all they had me do was 30 seconds and gave me the job. But learning how to prepare in different ways, to be a broadcaster on radio, talking for, a couple hours, teaches you how to prepare in a different way to be a journalist or be an interviewer on TV. That preparation helped me in different ways. And with the Inquirer, I got to do amazing things. Like I said, cover a UFC event, learn how to do a conference call interview for the women's Final Four with Gino Auriemma, Muffet McGraw, and turn a story around that way. Cover college basketball games, cover high school basketball, which gave me experience that I could put on my resume for my current job where I cover high school sports primarily. So I've done a lot of different things in the field, and I can give you a little glimpse into those. But I've also have contacts with people who have been working in the industry for years, and can give you a little bit of what they've taught me. And as this thing grows and I learn more about podcasting, like the title of the podcast is Sports Media Student Podcast. Like I said, because it's primarily for people who are potential sports media students interested in the field. But we're all students. We're all always learning. I'm learning every day, reading other people's work, consuming content and learning how to have it help me make, my readers and people who view the videos and stories that I write enjoy them more, and just become a better journalist, and just as the lines get blurred of content and between video and audio and written, trying to find the way to be a storyteller in the best way in 2019 as we move into 2020. So I'm learning while I do this. I'm learning how to do a podcast, how to put it on video. If you're watching on YouTube, hopefully it looks good. And put content on social media, chop it up. And I'm learning as I try and teach you. So as we grow this thing, hopefully I can get some people in different areas of sports media to come in and teach you guys that are interested. Maybe you don't want to be a writer like me. Maybe you want to be on camera, behind the camera. You want to do producing for a podcast, something. There's so many jobs in sports. I think a lot of people only see the on TV or the writers or reporters and think that that's the only thing they could do. There's somebody holding that camera, editing that equipment, that, gets the picture on TV, or, editing the stories that you read. So I want to be able to give you a glimpse into that field and give you a modern look at it, because, I listen to podcasts all the time with sports writers, and sometimes we'll talk about how they got their start, and it's good to learn how some of the best got into the field. But some of the best people doing this job got their first job 20 years ago, 15 years ago. It is not the same way to get in now. The things you need to know, the things that they look for on my resume were much different than theirs. Learning about SEO and making video, and making audio, and all the different things that go into landing a job in sports media now. So we're going to give you a modern look at what it looks like to go from, being a student to becoming a professional, and figure out if that's for you. So that's what the goal of this podcast is going to be, and what I'm going to try and give to you. And that's pretty much me and what my passion and why this means so much to me. I've been lucky to have some awesome mentors, and what I heard on Sarah Spain's podcast, that's what she said. She was interviewing Wright Thompson. He talked about, sending the elevator back down, for the people who, are trying to make their way into the field and climb this sports media, ladder, and find a way to get that first job. That you hear people say that getting into the field, getting that first job is the hardest. It's hard to get in. It's really hard. Trust me, I sent out a lot of applications and got a lot of no's, and we'll talk about that on a later podcast. But this is my way to give back to the next generation, and give them some of what I learned, and try and be a person that can help you. If you were like me when you got started and nobody around you is a writer or is on camera or knows anything about that, you don't have any exposure to anybody in the sports media industry. Now you do. You have me, and I'm going to give you access to everybody that I know, and we're going to learn how to do this together. And I'm going to give you some of my knowledge, and hopefully it can help you decide if this job is for you or not. And hopefully it leads you to a life that you love, and love to wake up every day and know that your job makes you happy. And that's all I can hope for anybody. That's the situation I have, and it's a great life, and I'd love to try and give it back to anybody. So that's what we're gonna do. That's what the goal of this podcast is. Quickly, what you can expect from future episodes that will not be an introduction. What we're gonna do is start off with something that I'm borrowing from class with my professor Aaron Carter at Rider University. We're going to take the topic of the week, because it's going to be weekly podcasts. We're going to talk about what the top topic of the week is, and not just talk about it, but figure out how we're going to advance the story, how are we going to take it to the next level, or tell it in a different way. You don't want to just think about things. We're not going to think about things as fans or necessarily just consumers of content here, because we are storytellers. So we want to look at it from the reverse view and think, how can I take this story, advance it, change it, and make it unique to me? Because, your viewers, listeners, readers are expecting something different from you than the 10 to 15 other people who were at the same press conference you were. So finding a way to make it unique and different is something that's important. So we'll start off with a quick little topic of the week. Then we'll jump into the lesson. And the first one in the next episode next week is going to be how to get started in this field. Doesn't seem like any more logical place for me then how should you get started for the first real episode of the podcast. So we'll jump into that. And then I'll leave you with a little, what I'm going to call motivational minute. Just something quick to get you in a positive frame of mind about either what we talked about or the time of the year or what's going on. And, leave you feeling positive and feeling in a good spot to go out and put some of this, what we talked about, into use, or just change the way you're thinking about, what's going on. For me, my outlook and everything was not good, and changing how I thought about where my life was, where it was going, was really important for me. When people were telling me no and telling me that my work was not good, and didn't believe in me, and friends and people made fun of me, behind my back for, dropping out of school and, thinking that I was going to become a sports reporter and making fun of the name you see above me. If you're watching on video, Rob Rose Sports, that became my social media handle, and, friends would crack jokes and stuff. And you know what? Now people are proud of me, and, they really want to know what I'm up to. And, it took changing the way I thought about what I was doing to be able to do that. And this is a tough field to get into, a tough field to stay in. You have to make a lot of sacrifices to do that. And you need to have the right outlook. So I'm going to leave you with a little bit of motivation to keep you going, keep you fired up, and keep everything going in the right way. So that's the plan. If this sounds like something that's interesting to you, you can follow me at Rob Rose Sports on anything. Video is going to be on YouTube. You can follow my social media. We'll have the links to the video and the podcast if you just want to listen. I appreciate you listening to this debut episode. We'll be back next week with the first lesson of how to get started. This has been the first episode of the Sports Media Student Podcast. I'm Rob Rose. Thanks for listening.